The rain had been falling since dawn, a soft, rhythmic patter against the windows. The kind that made everything feel slower, quieter, heavier. I moved through the house in a pair of cotton shorts and an old t-shirt, feet bare on the cold tile. There was no sound beyond the whisper of rain and the occasional creak of the old wooden beams. Ravi had left before sunrise, another business trip, another week of silence strung out between us. He kissed me on the forehead, like always, a gesture more habitual than heartfelt. He didn't see the way I lingered in the doorway after he left. He never really saw me at all anymore. The help had the day off. Except Kabir. I had almost forgotten he was even around. Kabir was quiet, almost too quiet. He didn't speak unless spoken to and moved with a kind of efficiency that made his presence easy to overlook. He came to us a year ago, sent by an agency Ravi trusted. He was maybe 25, calm-eyed, always respectful. I noticed him, of course I did, but only the way one notices a familiar fixture. Until recently. Lately, there had been moments, fleeting things. I'd catch him glancing at me while polishing the table, a second too long. His eyes would shift away, apologetic, but not ashamed. And perhaps, though I didn't want to admit it, I had started looking back. The heater in the bathroom had been inconsistent. I decided to take a bath instead. The luxury of time and solitude felt indulgent. I lit a candle, more out of habit than need, and turned the water on. The steam rose slowly, curling through the air like breath. I undressed absent-mindedly, tossing my clothes onto the counter, and sank into the warm water with a sigh. The tension I carried, the kind that came from being touched out of routine, not passion, began to melt away. I hadn't closed the door. Why would I? The house was empty. Or so I told myself. My eyes fluttered shut. I let myself drift, listening to the rain, the gurgle of water against porcelain. Then something shifted, a presence. A subtle shift in the air that made my eyes snap open. Kabir was standing in the doorway. He wasn't inside. Not yet. He stood still, one hand slightly raised as though frozen mid-action. His eyes were fixed on me, not hungrily, not shamelessly, but with a stunned kind of reverence, like he'd stumbled into a dream and didn't know how to wake up. For a second, I didn't move. My breath caught in my throat, but not out of fear. It wasn't fear I felt. It was heat. He blinked, startled, and stepped back immediately. Ma'am, I thought no one was in here. The heater, his voice faltered. Still, I said nothing. My heart pounded. The candlelight flickered behind me, casting shifting shadows on the wall. I watched him, not with anger, not with shame, but with something else entirely. Curiosity. Power. I didn't know you were home, he said again, his voice quieter now, eyes on the floor. I sat up slightly in the tub, the water lapping at my shoulders. I could have covered myself. I could have screamed, ordered him out, reported him. But I didn't. I tilted my head instead, studying him the way he had studied me. You fixed the heater from outside the bathroom, don't you? I asked, voice steady, controlled. He nodded slowly, not daring to look up. Then why are you standing there? He didn't answer. He couldn't. The silence stretched between us, thick, electric. I should have been angry. I should have felt violated. But I didn't. I felt something else rising in me, something dangerous and intoxicating. I saw his hands, twitching at his sides, unsure whether to flee or wait for permission. But I said nothing more. After a moment, he turned and disappeared into the hall, footsteps quiet as always. I let my head fall back against the edge of the tub, eyes on the ceiling, the echo of his gaze still warm on my skin. It was nothing. But it wasn't. Something had shifted, not in him, in me. And once a line is seen, it's only a matter of time before it's crossed. The rest of the day passed in slow motion, like walking underwater. I moved through the house, tidying things that didn't need tidying, unable to shake the weight of Kabir's eyes. Not just the gaze itself, but the fact that I hadn't stopped it, that I'd let the silence between us speak instead. By late afternoon, the rain had stopped. The air hung thick and humid, clinging to my skin. I changed into a robe, loosely tied, the fabric thin enough to feel the breeze through. I told myself it was just comfort, but a part of me knew better. I found him in the laundry area, sorting a pile of towels. He didn't look up when I entered. His hands moved mechanically, folding, stacking, avoiding me. "Kabir," I said. He froze. "Yes, ma'am?" Still not looking up. "Can you check the heater now? The water's still cold." He nodded, grabbed his toolbox, and followed me down the hall. His footsteps were measured, cautious. I didn't walk fast. I wanted him behind me. I wanted him to see the way the robe brushed against the backs of my knees. In the bathroom, I stood near the window while he crouched beside the panel under the sink, fiddling with wires. The silence grew again, stretching like something alive. "It was an accident," he said finally, voice low. "I know. I didn't mean to." "I know," I repeated, cutting him off gently. I turned to face him. "But you didn't look away." That made him pause. His hands stilled. Slowly, he rose, standing just a few feet from me. Our eyes met for the first time since the morning. "I couldn't," he said, barely more than a whisper. There it was, the line. I stepped closer, slow enough for him to stop me if he wanted to. He didn't. His breath hitched, chest rising and falling as though every inch between us was electric. "You shouldn't be here," I murmured. "I know, but you are." Neither of us moved for a long moment. The sound of water dripping from a leaky tap echoed between us. Then, finally, he reached out, tentative, almost reverent, and brushed his fingers along the edge of my sleeve. I didn't flinch. The touch was featherlight, as if he still wasn't sure I was real. I looked down at his hand, then back at his face. There was fear there, yes, but also want. Raw, unfiltered, undeniable. "I don't know what you think this is," I said, the words trembling with control. "I don't think," he replied. "I just feel." His hand slid down, knuckles grazing my forearm. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Then, very slowly, I reached up and touched his jaw. His eyes fluttered shut. We stood like that, suspended. No kiss. No rush. Just presence. His hand rested against my hip now, firm but cautious. I could feel his restraint, the constant push and pull between desire and danger. The robe shifted as I moved closer. My body brushed against his. He made a sound in the back of his throat, soft and helpless, and I felt my control slip, just a little. I could have stopped it, but I didn't want to. His lips were close now, hovering, waiting for permission. "I shouldn't," he said. "You already did," I whispered. And then we were there, skin, heat, breath, want. It wasn't rushed or rough. It was careful, like unwrapping something fragile. Every movement asked a question. Every sigh was an answer. When it was over, we didn't speak. He stood, adjusting his shirt, eyes flicking toward mine, unsure. I remained seated on the edge of the tub, robe drawn back over my shoulders, heart thundering. The room smelled like candle wax and something new. Something dangerous. "You should go," I said, voice soft, even. He nodded, left without another word. I stayed behind, staring at the faint mark his hand had left on my arm. A ghost of contact. A reminder. Outside, the rain had started again, as if to rinse the world clean. But I knew better. There are some things no water can wash away. The next morning, the house was no longer quiet, it was hollow. The walls felt different, like they were listening, watching. I moved through the space with a strange kind of awareness, every sound amplified. The tap of my heels on tile, the hum of the fridge, the distant rustle of leaves outside the kitchen window. Kabir was in the garden, trimming the hedges. From the window, I could see the back of him, straight posture, focused hands, like nothing had changed. But everything had. I hadn't spoken to him since he left the bathroom. He hadn't sought me out. That, perhaps, was what unsettled me the most. The silence between us wasn't just absence, it was weight. Dense. Breathing. Ravi called around noon. I let it go to voicemail. He'd said he'd be back early. Meetings finished ahead of schedule. He sounded pleased, unaware, safe in the illusion that nothing had shifted in the world he left behind. I stood in the mirror later, brushing my hair, and noticed something that hadn't been there before, not on my body, but behind my eyes. A sharpness. A glint. Something awakened. Ravi arrived around 6. The sound of his suitcase wheels scraping the floor broke the fragile stillness. "Hi," he said, placing his briefcase down. "Everything okay?" I smiled. "Of course." He kissed my cheek. I leaned into it like muscle memory. The familiar scent of his cologne wrapped around me, but it felt foreign, like trying to wear someone else's coat. He went upstairs to change. I stayed behind, watching the light shift across the floor, golden and soft. The kind of light that hides things in plain sight. Later, we had dinner together. I asked him about his meetings, his flight, the people he met. He answered with practiced detail, unaware that my mind had retreated elsewhere. Not out of guilt, but out of detachment. Kabir didn't appear all evening. When Ravi went to bed early, worn from travel, I walked out to the back veranda. The night was cool, crickets chirping in soft rhythms. Kabir was still outside, coiling the hose, deliberate and quiet. I didn't call to him. I just watched. And he knew. There was no longer a need for words. We had passed the point of questioning. What had happened couldn't be undone, nor spoken aloud. It was stitched between us, invisible but ever-present. Back in our bedroom, I slid under the sheets beside Ravi. He was already half asleep, turned away from me. I stared at the ceiling, counting the lines in the plaster. The silence here was different from the silence with Kabir. This was absence. The other had been tension, alive and dangerous. What did that say about me? I didn't feel regret. Not in the way I thought I might. There was a part of me, quiet and hidden, that felt powerful. Not because I had betrayed, but because I had chosen. For once. Chosen not to disappear behind the daily choreography of being wife, host, listener. Chosen to feel something that wasn't routine. And yet, the consequences were now mine to carry. Infidelity is rarely about the act itself. It's about the space it reveals, the hollow between people who once saw each other clearly. Ravi and I hadn't spoken in months, not truly. We'd exchanged plans, reports, meals, but not presence. And Kabir? Kabir had seen me. Not just my body, but the pulse beneath it. The woman buried under layers of composure and repetition. Still, I knew it couldn't happen again. Whatever it was, a rupture, a mistake, a moment, it had to live in that single sliver of time. But I also knew something else. A door had been opened. And now that I had stepped through it, the air on this side was different. Wilder. Unforgiving. Free. I closed my eyes, Ravi breathing steady beside me. The world outside continued without pause. Distant thunder rolled through the night sky. Tomorrow, we'd wake up and wear our faces. We'd speak our lines, play our roles. But in the quiet corners of the house, in the heat of memory, Kabir's shadow would remain. Some stories are never told aloud. Some desires never spoken. But they linger, just under the surface, waiting for the silence to speak again.